Find the courage to love yourself. Find the courage to breathe and open up your heart and love yourself. I appreciate that you put a lot of armor around your heart to protect yourself and get to wherever you've gotten to in life. But that armor will now destroy your life, and you need to breathe and shed that armor so you can open up your heart and really, really enjoy learning to love not only yourself, but others.
Hi, and welcome to Lead Well.
Today, we welcome Dr. Ron Stotts. And let me tell you a few words about him. So, Dr. Ron Stotts, or Ron, as I might say, is an executive coach, 3-time best-selling author, and international speaker with over 45 years of experience. He specializes in guiding entrepreneurs and executives through personal mastery to achieve higher-level leadership and success. Throughout his career, Ron has assisted numerous individuals in navigating personal and professional transformations, emphasizing the importance of inner development in effective leadership. His approach integrates deep personal insight with practical leadership strategies, aiming to foster both personal fulfillment and organizational success. Wow, that sounds so fascinating. Welcome, Ron. Welcome, Dr. Stott.
It's so fascinating. I have no sense of retirement coming up. I think I'll do it literally as long as I can.
Wow, that's fantastic, because I'm sure the world needs people like you.
Hopefully, yeah.
So when I looked at your website and when we had our first conversation, you shared with me that you are helping people to create their inspired life. So your slogan is creating your inspired life. Now, how would you define inspiration? What does creating inspired life mean to you personally? And how has this concept evolved throughout your career?
That's a lot. I'll take it all in. Yeah, inspired life is the life that you want to be living. And maybe you're not even aware you want to be living it because you're dealing with so many challenges and sabotagers and whatnot in your own head or in your life. But yeah, when people come to me, usually they've been relatively or quite successful, but they've kind of hit this glass ceiling that people talk about. And the truth of it is they've developed the abilities that have gotten there, and they've used those abilities that were usually a very logical left brain mind and driven sort of attitude towards life. And that has gotten them to really great levels of success. But it now seems like it's holding them back, and they've doubled down, they've tried harder, they've done all these things to create more success, but it's just not working. As a matter of fact, their life oftentimes looks like it's falling apart. You know, their personal relationships, as well as losing key people in their organizations, and financially it's not looking as good as it was or something. And for me, that's an exciting point for them, because it really means it's just an indicator that they're ready to evolve. And evolving really is just an indicator that you need to really go within yourself and access more of who and what you are. So, you know, that logical left brain got you into the right schools, it got you the right job, it got you the success that you've gotten to. But now it's time to become more self-aware and more emotionally intelligent so that you can work with people in a more supportive, collaborative, cooperative way, so that you can have relationships that are have more depth, more meaningful, more heart, if you would. And so what comes out of that initial work that I do, and it really only takes a couple months to do some of the deepest healing that we need to do, is all of a sudden they really recognize what they want to aspire to. They recognize their highest intention. And that's always at that point, as they graduate from that foundational work that we do, is not only about themselves being a better this or more of that, but it's about, okay, how do I contribute to the whole of society? Inevitably, because self initially is defined, and appropriately so, looking within their own, sense of self, their body and mind. But as they heal and grow and develop, they really create a bigger sense of self, more societally oriented, relationship oriented, more compassion, empathetic oriented.
So it goes beyond just the individual.
Yeah, I think holding within yourself and thinking of this as yourself is really very fear-oriented. Just a little detour perhaps, but a child, I've asked this all over the world, so I can say with authorities that believe it. A child wants unconditional love more than anything else in the world when they're born and ongoingly. And they also recognize that they'll do whatever it takes to acquire as much of that love as they can.
Hmm.
Well, of course, most of us are born to parents who haven't really explored and developed self-acceptance and, fallen in love with themselves and unconditionally love themselves. So they're not capable of giving us that unconditional. I was a mess in my early 20s when I said my two sons, it's unconditional love. What do you mean? So, in time, yes, I grew and developed, and my son did a better job of parenting, and their kids are doing an exceptionally good job of parenting. It's just a matter of that recognizing, gee, when I was a child, when my sons were children, they weren't getting that unconditional love. And so they had to deal with all the unacknowledged anger, hurt, fear, and shame around that. And they stuffed that into their gut, into that cave within that Joseph Campbell talks about, where we hide, that we have to go to access, what we truly want. And I congratulate people who have success just using their left brain. But it's also exciting to see when they're ready to evolve and grow. And that's when they come to me. And it's a scary point for them oftentimes, but it's an exciting place in a short time when they realize, oh, I just have to access more of myself, and it's a better thing. It allows them to create that inspired life that they truly want.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of a conversation I just had with James French from the Trust Technique, the work with the animals I'm doing, where we said it's like we all think, and we think that our brain, our thinking really makes us happy, brings us forward. While when we get into a place of non-thinking and we're able to actually only be, we are already happy. We are in a better place, which is so contradictory to what everyone outside is telling us.
Yeah, I kind of grew up in the 60s, so I have a very strong spiritual background and probably meditated 30,000 hours by the time I was 40. And so for me, it became, I remember I used to do talks, public talks in Europe and in the U.S. on journey into silence, journey into the light, those types of things. Very new age woo-woo at this point in life, probably for most. But what I was on to was, it's that journey into the silence, that quieting of the mind, that actually allows the mind to rewire so that you access your highest levels of thinking. Yeah. And that's an exciting level to get to, and certainly where my clients, that's where we target, is getting that integrated whole brain thinking going, because it just makes a world of difference in their capabilities of the leader as a person. The people who really stay with it and practice it, they start using what I call big mind. Big mind comes from that quiet place where, I have a little, don't do it much anymore, but I used to design Japanese gardens, and a fellow approached me and he wanted this. He was actually a CEO that I was working with, and he wanted $1 million Japanese garden. Of course, he had bigger, better, all that kind of mentality in the San Francisco area. And to be honest with you, I was like, I'm too busy with my practice. I can't. I'm going to have to do drawings. I'm going to have to do all these things. And so I didn't have time. But rather than tell him that, I just sat in my back. I lived in the redwoods and was sitting on my hill, and I just quieted my mind and said, okay, I want to create this 1-acre Japanese garden for these people to help them live a deeper, more fulfilling life. So I just put that out there, and I sat there in silence, breathing. I'm just focusing really on the silence, and all of a sudden it starts to come in. As it comes in the 150-foot stream coming down the hill and the large pond and major aspects of the project, but then it starts filling in all the detail down to the sound of the grass that's moving in the wind and that type of thing. And 3 months later, I introduced the idea and they got excited and we did it. And 3 months later, we won all sorts of awards and that type of things. And so it's that big mind capability of accessing the best without going down all those roads of trial and error and effort, force. And that's what they learn to do. They learn, oh, I'm having trouble accessing something. Well, rather than try, they quiet and focus.
Mhm. Sounds to me like you're starting from the big picture then, rather than thinking about all the details that you will need to look into.
In that situation. Well, there's a part of you that takes into consideration all of that.
Mm.
Does it on a level that isn't just that logical left brain thinking, it's a much higher level of thinking.
Mm.
You know, somebody could say, oh, the person, I don't know whether you've ever heard of Buckminster Fuller, but Buckminster Fuller was a thought leader back in the 70s, probably.
Mhm.
And I was assisting him on stage, and he was like 87, I was 27. We were in front of, a few hundred business people getting the whole brain ready for business.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, in the middle of it, he stopped. And, 27, I'm going, let's get going there. There's expectations around you speaking. And he kind of was looking up. And then after what seemed like a prolonged time, he came back in and finished. And I asked him that evening, I was sitting in front of the fire having some hot chocolate. And I said, kind of bold of me to, by the way, what the, that's it. And he said, no, I was just accessing wisdom, accessing knowledge. And, he was fascinated by my meditation. He knew I could go into the silence, and he really appreciated that and actually wanted to find out more about that. But he said, so when you go into the silence, it's not just a matter of sitting there. That's fine to do that. But you can also access higher levels of wisdom. And so that's where I came up with Big Mind, because in my work as a counselor, as a psychologist, I was still young enough that I was trying to solve people's problems. I was trying to fix people so that they would think I was good and send other people and all those ego-oriented, driven things. And then I got to the place where all I have to do is sit here and meditate and watch what comes out. And it'll always be perfect. So I had years of training of just sitting there watching myself say things and guide people and respond to things from that perfect place, and really developed a core trust. That's where the best of who and what we are comes from.
So, what is your personal motivation behind all that? What's your inspiration?
Well, I got grandkids and I got great grandkids. And I'm at an age where the truth is, unless our current political situation screws it up at a much more rapid pace, which it potentially could, I'm going to be fine. I live in a lovely place. I have a lovely life and boating and golfing and doing my work and meeting wonderful people. And the truth is, by the time I leave the planet, things will probably still be functional. But when you look at having grandkids and great-grandkids, all of a sudden you have to be really concerned, because it doesn't look like it's going in a good direction that's going to be supportive of their life. And so that's really my contract, is to make the world a better place for those kids. Not just my own, of course, but for all of them. And it turns out, and it was certainly something my publisher guided me through, was that leaders, high-level conscious leaders, not just leaders who are successful, but leaders who are doing that consciously, have a greater impact and lasting impact in the world than really anybody else. And so I happen to have a rare talent of being able to take people into those higher levels of consciousness. And so I thought, okay, well, if I can create 1,000 conscious leaders, and they have a couple thousand people each that they're supporting in their work and they allow them to feel safer, more collaborative, better about themselves, support their leadership abilities coming in, and we're moving in the right direction. And so that is my intention, is to create a more conscious and caring world. by really guiding people into those higher levels of leadership so they're capable of not only taking themselves, but others into that level.
I mean, you must have gotten a lot of feedback from the people, the leaders that worked with you. What kind of stories are you hearing there?
Some stories. They might have fear that some people are leaving the organization, but it's only the people who aren't ready to transition and grow. All of a sudden they realize that people are approaching them. I mean, really high quality, exciting people that they'd love to have work for them are approaching. And so all of a sudden their organization, well, initially felt a little threatened because of all the exchange of, they're not doing top-down management or leadership anymore. They're doing more inclusive, supportive leadership. And that's threatening to some people. They'd like to be controlled or something, perhaps. But it really cuts down on productivity and profits. And so as you lead from a more conscious place and you bring out the best in everybody and they feel like they're part of something that's important in their life and to the world, and then all of a sudden everybody feels safer. They begin to collaborate and cooperate more fully. They begin to work as a team. And that teamwork, all of a sudden, you're more productive and there's more profits. And all the leadership research shows that at least a 40 to 50% increase in productivity and profits is what comes out of the shifting the mentality of the organization from top down to supporting everybody involved. And the truth is, the leaders, their lives change. I mean, I'm thinking of one fellow who came to me just after COVID started. And he felt like he was losing everything. Very successful guy, 5, 9-figure businesses. But it was all looking like it was falling apart. And the love of his life was leaving him. His 2 adult sons were disconnecting. And he being a bully and authority and everything else wasn't working for him anymore. And within a month or two, he really started falling in love with himself. He started recognizing the value of everybody in his organization. He started restructuring his organizations. He started restructuring his life. And over a few months, he started reaching out to the woman of his dreams that had left. And she came back and they got married and they're a wonderful couple. They're doing great. His 2 sons came back into his life and they're very in a supportive relationship now. And his organization, which are all 5 of these very wealthy organizations, he was basically micromanaging them all. So he was exhausted and just not able to keep up as they continued to grow. And all of a sudden, as he had sent me several of his C-suites and they had become CEOs of each of the organizations. So all of a sudden, he got to focus on what he wanted to do more than anything. And so his life just turned into this really magical adventure. He started traveling with his wife and he started focusing on the aspect of the businesses that he was most interested in. And that turned into another business that is probably going to do better than all the businesses. So yeah, it's somebody's in business and they want to, well, it's about making money. It's about being successful. Great. Then that's about being conscious. Because you can do it. You can be much more successful as a conscious entrepreneur or CEO or whatever. In terms of my wife kind of pointing this out, we were walking in a park the other day and the Canadian geese were going over in that traditional V that they fly in. And she was sharing that if one goose was flying, they could only go a little ways each day. Where with a whole flock flying that V, where they're working together, they can go 70% further. That's true in a person's life when they're organized and acting from a wholeness, and it's true for an organization as when they act as a supportive wholeness and people feel safe and valued.
Wow.
That's it.
And it's so much more fun for everyone involved in.
Everybody. When they're families, you come home excited, not tired, when, complaining, when angry.
Wow, that's so exciting. So you talked a lot about your experience in meditation, and I guess not everyone has that background. So where should people start? What's the first step that we can take towards more consciousness, more conscious leading, more inspiration?
Well, let me step back then to that inner child who wanted love and acceptance more than anything else. We all had experiences as we were growing up that we didn't know how to emotionally handle. And so the child, the adult, the same thing, when they don't know how to deal with an emotional issue, they stop breathing and shove it down into that inner cave. And the other idea is that the child is, okay, I'll look at that later when I'm more mature or when I have the support or guidance to be able to deal with it. Of course, that generally, we lock it in there so fully we don't want to show anybody that, and so we never look for the help and always live that fear-oriented life. But so it starts simply is the first thing we do is stop breathing and shove that in there. So the way to get it back out is to begin breathing and open those doors and get reconnected with that emotional backlog. Now you're the adult who can reparent that inner child. You're the adult who can remember to breathe and guide that inner child through those emotional aspects of their life that they didn't know how to deal with. You can be the first person that actually begins to accept and love them unconditionally, which is what they truly want. Of course, the adult wants that more than anything, too.
Mm.
So breathing and beginning to explore your life. And the more you explore it, the more you understand how you're run by your emotional backlog, your fears. We're only aware of, 5-10% of what we're thinking. The rest is subconscious. So the rest, like 90% of all that rattling around noise in our mind that distracts us from ever accessing the best of who we are, is really coming from that emotional backlog, from that fear, that sense of that the effect of all those things that were incomplete as in our growing up. And so as we heal those things, the mind becomes quieter. As we heal and breathe into those things, the mind becomes more focused. And if you learn to be quiet and present enough with whatever is coming into your life, that you're able to breathe and be curious and present. And if you do that moment to moment, that's called mindfulness. That's how you develop a mindful life, is by really literally learning to breathe again into and through whatever is coming up. And that gives you, in that present conscious state, you'll always see what your best next step is. So all you have to do is take that. And if it doesn't resolve the place or issue, that's fine. Breathe and be curious and take the next step and the next step. And you will find your way through whatever's there and out into what you're truly capable of. And that's called living inspired life.
Oh, wow. So it's not having a vision that is far out, but really taking step after step after step.
I don't find, because I intentionally ask people when they first come in, what's your highest intention? And it's always self-oriented. It's always getting healed. It's about becoming a better parent or making more money, something like that. So they don't really have a sense of their higher vision because think of it almost like there's this veil between where they are and their highest intention. They can't see it. I'm not saying that's a real veil, but it looks like a big block wall. As they learn to breathe and heal, as they learn to access their emotions and get clear, as they begin to quiet the mind, and in that quiet mind, the forebrain begins to blossom and becomes the CEO of your life rather than the amygdala, the emotional center. And as you access those higher levels of thinking and be more present, your life begins to change. It gets exciting. You have vision, you have purpose, you have hope. And that's what we need to really have the courage to go through life.
Wow. I mean, I could listen to you all day long. It's so fascinating. Where can people find you? How can people learn more from you?
I think the easiest place is just to go to my website at ronstotts.com, RONSTOTTS.com. There's free material there that they can begin their journey and looking deeper within themselves, whether as an entrepreneur or personal levels. They can watch different materials that I've recorded that helps them understand. There's breathing programs that allow them to begin to explore using the breath, and They can see I'm a 3-time bestseller, so they can see the books that are all, they're written in an organized one after the other way so that to help them guide them on that journey. But the truth is, information does not create transformation. To be willing to step out of your head and into the reality of breathing and expressing, acknowledging, expressing, releasing the emotional backlog.
And also being ready to do that, because I see a lot of people, they want to change, they want transformation, but without changing too much.
Very, yeah, very cautiously. And hopefully it includes in that a lot of people, they want to do personal growth like this. Doesn't work. They keep bouncing up. You've got to take time to really go up through the resistance and into the space where there's less resistance. That's much more exciting and easier.
Yeah. And I always also say that's what makes life fun, because if it was just like constant progression, it would get boring at some point.
Well, it doesn't seem to work. And I've watched some people for 20, 30, 40 years, and I'm doing it. I'm on my way there, but they never get anywhere. That's still those old issues and challenges that they've always been at the effector.
Wow. If there was one thing you wanted to leave our audience with, what would that be?
Find the courage to love yourself. Find the courage to breathe and open up your heart and love yourself. I appreciate that you put a lot of armor around your heart to protect yourself and get to wherever you've gotten to in life. But that armor will now destroy your life, and you need to breathe and shed that armor so you can open up your heart and really, really enjoy learning to love not only yourself, but others. And it's really in those loving relationships with others that you can find the magic of life.
Wow. There is no more to say. Thank you so much, Ron. That was fantastic.
Right.
And I know you're on a mission to make this world a good place and maybe even a better place for generations to come. And thank you so much for doing that.
Well, thanks for having me. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Yeah, wish you the best.
Thank you.
This was Lead Well. Now, what is the one thing that you're taking away from this episode? Please share in the comments below, and do share the podcast with your friends and family, but only if you like it.